The purpose of this video is to give you an introduction to Gravit Designer without the constraints of creating something precious. You're going to be making a blob similar to this lovely blob, and you are going to learn how to use the path tool in a couple of different ways. We're going to then add some effects to it to give it some depth and some interest. Don't forget to stop, pause, and try throughout the video. For this project, I'm going to start with a 6 by 6 inch canvas. So I'm going to type in 6, 6, and change pixels to inch. If you do not change pixels from inch, your canvas will behave in a very odd way, and you will find it extremely frustrating. I'll just go to Create and go to Fit All. Now, if you like the dark background, you will go to Edit, Settings, and change to Dark Theme. Okay, and then go ahead and save the changes. All right, so we have the three tools that we're going to be using are the Select tool, and underneath that, the Subselect tool, and we will also be using the Path tool. Those are pretty much the only three tools we're going to use in the menu, but we will be using some items over here in the right-hand inspector side. So with the pen tool selected, there's a couple of ways you can draw your awesome blob. You can either use a point to point and just simply tap and make a blob in this manner, closing it off by when you get to that blue, you close it and it will form a white blob. And yes, white and white canvas, so we can go ahead and change the color so you can see what we're doing here. Now you can use the Subselect tool to adjust the curves of your blob, so we can bend the curves in between the lines. So these things, these circle or squares, you'll see them as squares sometimes, are called nodes or anchors. And these little ones are called handles. And when I grab a handle, I change the angle of the curve. So I'm going to go ahead and I can adjust how this blob of mine looks, so I can make it wavy and be kind of weird about it. Now I've accidentally deselected it, so I'm going to go back to the Subselect tool so that I get those adjustable tools again. I'm going to go ahead and finish up with my silly looking, there we go. Now, very odd looking blob. If I want to make any changes to this, let's say I want this to be really smooth, I can tap on that. I'm going to go way over here to the side under Joint. Right now this is a disconnected set, so that means these anchors move separately. But if I go to Mirrored, they will be exactly the same. And whatever I do to one side, it will happen to the other side. And that allows for some nice, easy shifting, easy maneuvers. But if you want your joint to be at a right angle, like a straight one, I can select it and go straight, and then that will make it not curved at all. So there's different ways of using that tool. Okay, so I'm going to let you go ahead and do something like this at this point. So this is a good place to pause and then go ahead and try creating a blob using the Path tool and just tapping for your selection. Okay, so now I'm going to show you another method. I'm going to use the pointer tool to delete that. So now you can create the tools. Another method is to create the tool, the curves as we draw. So when I tap and drag, you'll see the handles appear. The direction that I go is the direction that the next line is going to be in. So if I tap and drag, depending on where I'm going is where the line will be. And this just takes practice. And you can go ahead and blob and change your angles like this. But if you want to make a change in the way this behaves, if I hold the Alt key down, I can actually make the angle change and make that a disconnected joint. So now I can go ahead and do something else with this, and I can connect it back up to here, and there's my blob. Back to the select tool, and I'm going to give it a color. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and try that method, pause the video now, go back to your canvas, and go ahead and give that a try. All right, so now we're back, and I'm going to show you some of the cool tools that we have here. We can make the color whatever we want, either here on the on the bottom, or we can drag this around, and that will give us all kinds of other color options that we want. If we have an item that's on the canvas that we want to grab something from, color from, you can grab the color picker. Okay, I'm going to tap off of that. So now I've got it selected, and I'm going to do a few interesting things just to make it pop a little bit. I'm going to adjust the kind of fill it is. Instead of having a color fill, I'm going to give it a radial gradient. And here I can make some adjustments as to where I want that highlight and how the angle that I want that highlight to be. So it's pretty cool how you can make this adjustment here and that. So you can go ahead and do something like that, play with that. If you want to change the color, you'll notice that the black, it's blue to black here. See that, how that matches on this, matches this. If I don't want black to be that color, I can tap this and I can choose whatever color I want on the color picker and then tap that. And now I'm going from blue to green. Okay, and I can change this. When I change this slider, it changes the way that behaves as well. So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to tap off of that. So now I have kind of an interesting blob here. I'm going to tap so that the corners are selected. And now I'm going to try something else. I'm going to take this border down to 0 and hit enter. So now I no longer see this border that's black. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an inner shadow. So inner shadow here, tap to select it, and it will automatically give you a 5-pixel border. And you notice how that's a tiny little dark border. So I can make that bigger. I can make that 10 pixels, enter, so that it makes it stand out a little bit more. I can change the color of that, so I can make it more of a red color. I know that's hard to see here, so I'll change the opacity here and see what that looks like. So you can do something like that. Because red and green are complements, it actually works really well. But we can try other colors. We can try blue. We can try just a deeper shade of green. There's different things that you can try. So I'll tap off of it. Okay, so that gives us the inner glow. I can actually create another blob on top of here to give it something interesting. So I'm going to grab the path tool, and I'm just going to go ahead and make kind of a space in here. This is automatically taking from the original what I left off with. I may not want that, in which case I actually don't. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to turn it into a regular color fill, and I'm going to give it a white color. Okay, so that's pretty boring, but let's play with that a little bit. I'm going to tap. All right, I'm going to switch to the select tool, and I'm going to tap that so I've got it selected. Now I'm going to add a blur to it. So as I increase this bar, I can increase the blur. I'm just going to show you something quickly. I'm going to change that to black and then continue. So I'm going to increase that blur, but you'll notice if I put the blur close to the edge that it bleeds off onto the artboard. If you want to do more layers, you can do that as well. So you can turn that blur, maybe you want that colored like that. So you can add multiple layers of color. Now the final, so pause and play with that. All right, for the final thing that we're going to do now is we are going to give this a drop shadow. So this larger one, I am going to select that and I'm going to give it a drop shadow. So I'm going to tap it. Automatically gives us a drop shadow of 5 pixels, 65% opacity using the color black. I can change the color to a red if I want to, which is kind of weird, but let's go with it. I can change the drop shadow to say 15 pixels. Now you see more of it. And now I'm going to change it on its X and Y axis. So I'm going to say move it over 10 and over 10. And you'll see what happens. So it moves it off to the side. So I get this shadow. So now we've created a blob. We've given some blurs. We have an inner glow or an inner shadow. We have a drop shadow. And now we're ready to save. So I want you to go to File and Save. And you can go ahead and call this Blob. Save it so that you have it. Okay, and now you can export that. So we're going to go to Export, Export. We're going to change it to transparent, the canvas to transparent. So all we're exporting is this blob. Keep it as a PNG to keep its transparency, and go ahead and export that to your Google Drive.